Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me through the power of the internet is...
BJ Mendelson.
Cool. So, who are you? What do you do?
That's a great question. I am probably the only person on planet Earth who can say they've worked as a mall Santa and also spoke at the United Nations. So I am a world-renowned speaker and author on the subjects of privacy and social media and word-of-mouth marketing. And more importantly, to me anyway, is I am also a comic book writer.
Cool. So which of these things do you consider to be your sort of main thing that you do?
I'm trying to push more into just the comics work. We'll see what happens. I'm starting the publicity push for a national story of minor significance, which is a self-help comic book. And depending on how that goes, I'll either keep pushing on that front, or I might have to go back and write another serious book.
Right. So I've been reading a little bit of social media's bullshit.
Okay.
So I guess one of my usual starting questions is, how did you start doing what it is that you're doing? But since you have kind of this varied range of mall Santa and speaker and comic book writer, so I guess, how did you get started?
I should mention I also applied recently to be the MC for a pig racing contest. So my dad is not a fan of that idea, so I haven't pushed too hard on it. But I guess the reason why I mention that is when I was a teenager, I wanted to be George Carlin, and I realized very quickly, just from I read every interview that he did, I listened to every interview that he did, and he was constantly saying the best way to be a good comedian is to get stage time and just keep doing it over and over and over again.
Right.
And so when I was 18, I figured out, okay, I am going to book concerts because I'm too young to get into bars. To be, if you're in upstate New York, to be a comedian, it varies state by state. But in New York at the time, you had to be 21 and over to come in and perform at the bar.
Right.
The loophole was if you rented out the bar, you could do whatever you want.
Sure.
And so when I was 18, I figured out, okay, so if I book concerts and I pre-sell tickets along with the band, then we'll have money to put on a show, and I can do my comedy and they can play their music. And so that's what I did. I did 55 of those up and down the East Coast. But the thing is, when you're 18 years old, you don't really have a lot of money coming in. You're entirely dependent on the internet to promote your stuff. And so that's really where all this started, because I very early on was on MySpace when it first came out, was on YouTube when it first came out, was on Facebook when it first came out, on and on and on. And so through there, I just started getting contacted by people who were kind of like, hey, can you help me promote my thing using these web platforms?
Yeah.
And that's sort of how this whole ball got rolling.
So, I mean, do you even kind of consider yourself an expert in these fields, or is it just more so that since you've been doing it long enough, because that is kind of what you were saying in the book, you've been doing it long enough that now people just ask you?
Yeah, I think that expertise is a weird thing, especially in the humanities or any field where it's not technical, where I can't measure. For example, you're at a music school, right?
Yeah.
So I have a baseline to measure whether or not someone's truly an expert in their specific instrument.
Exactly.
Whereas in something that's more soft skilled, like marketing, especially, I don't think there's any such thing as expertise. I think it's just putting in your reps and who's been doing it the longest. And so I think that just by virtue of doing it since I was 18 years old, I just turned 35. I've been doing it longer than most people, and so I have a better idea of what works and what doesn't because of that.
Yeah. And then I guess going to the other side of, or one of the other sides of what you do, what made you want to write for comic books specifically, but also just writing at all?
So I wanted to be a writer really early on. My dad was a school teacher in the Bronx for about almost 40 years, and he was an administrator. And I mentioned that because there was always books all over the house. Like I was in elementary school reading Tom Clancy books. So, which is not like the best thing for someone in the sixth grade to be reading for a lot of reasons. But pretty early on, I was like, okay, I kind of get this. I think I can do this for a living. So I wanted a creative outlet. And so I took to writing. And in high school, I had a website go viral in like the organic sense of something going viral, not in the way that like if you post a cat picture and then blows up, and the next thing you tweet out has maybe like 2 responses to it.
Sure.
That's what I mean when I say like go viral. So I had a website that blew up, and everyone said it was really funny. So I just kept at it, and that's really what kept me going. Was I realized that I can entertain people by being a writer.
Yeah. And I mean, now you've written some books and they're published, but then also with comic books specifically, I feel like, I mean, since the beginning of comic books, they've never been actually taken seriously as a medium. So what makes comic books special to you, and what makes you want to write for them?
There's just multiple ways I can answer this. I'm trying to decide like which one. So I'll give you 2 things. The first is that I think, in terms of where we are today culturally, that the stigma that used to be attached to comic books it's still there, but it's faded. Because it used to be like when I was growing up in the 90s, pretty much every journalist, regardless of what media platform they were writing about, when they talked about comics, there was always some headline like, "Oh, comics ain't for kids anymore," and or like "Zing, Biff, Pow." It's like they were always trying to be cute.
Yeah.
And tie it into like the really campy Batman. That doesn't really exist anymore because people my age are now taking editorial positions. We're not just the writers anymore. We're starting to move up the corporate food chain. So because of that, you've got people who are kind of like, I grew up reading comics and watching professional wrestling. Like Bill Simmons is a good example. Like Bill Simmons is a huge pro wrestling fan. But now, because he's got producing power, he's able to make like these world-class documentaries on Andre the Giant on HBO. And when it comes out, we don't treat it like, oh, it's a pro wrestling thing. We treat it like, oh, this is like a prestige documentary that just happens to be a pro wrestler. So I think that, we're getting to a point culturally where these things have less of a stigma. The other thing is that, I have a niece who is Chinese. She's bilingual. And so I like the idea that, comics are almost universal to a certain extent, depending on, like if it's comedy based, it might be, depending on how specific the comedy is, it might not translate. But for the most part, comics are a medium that's global, that regardless of what language you speak or where you're from, it's something you can look at and kind of enjoy and get into. And we see examples of that all the time, like Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
At least for the first season, before it got too up its own butt with its mythology, which is what happened in the comic. And I was kind of concerned that would happen in the cartoon as well. Like Attack on Titan, the first season was a worldwide phenomenon. But that was something that in a lot of respects was very Japanese. I mean, they're in a walled off city, which is a lot like Japan, where, it's like completely, it's a very,
it's an island.
Right, it's an island. So, and then structurally, like there's a lot of homogeny. So, and so that allows for like in Japan, if you were to make a joke, what's cool about it is that you could just point to someone's pants, and because there's so much homogeny within the society, they will know what joke you're referring to, and they will laugh and they will find it hilarious. That's from a book called I think it's called The Humor Code, if I'm not mistaken, but they took something that was very specific to their culture, and it became like this worldwide hit. And so I think that comics allow you to do that in a way that you really can't with just a written word.
And there is also like another layer to comics that, I mean, yes, nowadays we have these gigantic blockbusters like Infinity War that are based on comic books, but you know,
Right.
you still have graphic novel experiences, the anti superhero comic like Watchmen, or even just I don't even know how to describe Mouse, but
Right.
so there is a range of stories that you can tell through comic books. So what is it that you're going for with your writing and in comic books?
Well, so there's three sort of comics that I'm working on. I say three sort of because I just did a preview for the third one. I haven't really pushed it too much, but one of them is just a straight up superhero adventure, and it was really just my way of writing something that I just enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with that stuff, so I thought it'd be fun to actually do it and see what the response was. But the other thing was, self-help is something that I started to research for my third book, or fourth technically, because I ghostwrote a book. And I realized that like everything that needs to be said in the self-help genre has been said already, but it hasn't necessarily been said in a comic book format.
Right.
And I thought that was really interesting. And so because comics allow you to really do anything you want,
Yeah.
I was like, what if we did a self-help comic book? And I don't know if it's the first. I'm sure someone has had the idea before, but I think that what I'm doing is one of the earlier versions or one of the earlier works in the field of like self-help comics. And so I was interested in seeing what I could do with the medium and how, because like, for example, in the National Story of Minor Significance, what it allows me to do, instead of just telling you an anecdote and then telling you what you should learn from that, which is the basic format of every self-help book, because it's from the Bible, the Sermon on the Mount, which is what they're basically copying. Like I could literally go inside my own head and show you like a visual depiction of like baggage, of like stupid stuff that I'm holding on to from like high school. And I can show you that on the page of a comic book, and visually it's something that you can understand quickly, as opposed to me spending pages describing it. So that's really interesting to me, and that's sort of what drew me to doing that sort of thing with a National Story of Minor Significance.
Yeah. So, and then I guess again trying to go through all of the things that you are attached to. So I never grew up watching wrestling.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I don't understand it. Like there's from an outsider's point of view, it's ridiculous, right? So how would you explain wrestling to an outsider to make them be like, oh, okay, I can see why people like this?
Well, there's a couple of ways, right? So the first is that, and the first thing I've noticed people echoing this talking point. So I'm kind of excited because I was one of the first people I'm not saying I was the first, but I was one of the first people who was saying that pro wrestling is just a live action comic book.
Yeah, in a way.
once you look at it, and then there's some shows that embrace that. There's like Lucha Underground, which is the most ridiculous of the different American wrestling shows that are on the air, because it's taken the Mexican Lucha Libre style and it makes it look very cinematic. Like it's almost like a Quentin Tarantino film that just so happens to have wrestling as a part of it. And so there's that aspect to it where I just say it's a live action comic book. And once you can look at it that way, you realize, oh, okay, this isn't like a pretend sport. It's a story. It's a drama.
Yeah.
It just so happens to take place within a wrestling ring. The second way to look at it is that it's a very unique American institution. It traces its lineage to like the 1890s, probably a little earlier than that. It's embedded in the culture so much that Abe Lincoln was a wrestler. Like he wasn't a professional wrestler, but like he was into wrestling. That was like a thing that people were into. So you can tell the story of America through the story of professional wrestling, so much so that even though I despise the current president of the United States, that's someone who got famous in part through their participation in professional wrestling. We have a governor who also got elected through professional wrestling. And so it's just if you look at it like as an art form, it's something that's distinctly American in the way that few things are, like jazz. And so that's another way to come at it and then be like, okay, I kind of get this. Like it's
Yeah.
like a goofy, silly thing, but it's unique to this country.
Another way that I've heard it described, it's sort of like it's a soap opera with fighting in between.
Yeah.
Or Max Landis's Wrestling Isn't Wrestling. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
But that was a great way of sort of understanding for me to sort of see like, okay, I see why, there's wrestling nerds, and it's sort of it makes sense.
If you're a writer, I mean, just put aside that it's professional wrestling for a second.
Right.
There's no other medium where you can continuously tell the stories of both a real person and the performer and watches those two things intersect and change over the course of like 20 years, which is what Max Landis was pointing out.
Yeah.
He was showing you the continuum of Triple H's real life career and story career. And that's very unique. Like that's not something you can easily reproduce in other forms. I mean, if you tried to do that in a comic book, it would be really confusing.
Right. Yeah.
Like if you tried to do it in the movie, it would be really confusing to the point where you would lose a lot of the audience. But in professional wrestling, you're able to tell this long, ongoing story in a very unique way, which I'm fascinated by.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that I like to talk about a lot is sort of making progress through whatever it is that you do. And so in Social Media is Bullshit, you kind of talked about some of the like mistakes that you've made over time. And so a lot of times, since I do have a lot of musicians on the podcast, I ask about like musical hurdles, what's something that you've been learning to do, but I guess it's sort of difficult to conceptualize how to become a better musician, but also becoming a better podcaster or writer. Let's start with writing. What's been a writing hurdle for you?
I think just understanding that there's nothing that's going to happen short term. I think for a long time we allowed the social media gurus and hucksters that tell you, you just got to hustle and cash in on your passion and grind, and you'll see results. And you might not see results for like a decade.
Sure.
And I think that's a very hard thing for people first to realize, because especially, I shouldn't say it's an American thing, because it's more a Western thing, because I used to walk around saying it's an American thing, and then I traveled and heard in Russia, and then there was people from Brazil, and then there was people from the United Kingdom that all kind of told me the same thing. So I guess in the West, we've become increasingly conditioned to instant results and instant gratification. So and a lot of the advice that we get is, if you work hard, you'll see results. But
sure,
it's not really the case. Like you work hard, and maybe someday out of the blue, an agent will contact you and say, I like your stuff, I would like to sign you. And that's what happened to me. I was writing funny stuff on the internet from 1998 to 2000, let's say 2009. And then out of the blue, Dan Mandel from Sanford J. Greenberger emails me. He's like, you're really funny, I'd like to work with you. But I couldn't, but if you look at it objectively, I wouldn't have gotten to the point where I was good enough for him to invite me to work with him.
Sure, yeah.
Had I not kept at it. Had I started, because what happens is a lot of people just quit. Like for podcasts in particular, you can see this where there are tens of thousands of podcasts, no exaggeration,
right?
That started and then gave up after like 3 months.
Sure.
Like they just gave, or maybe 6 months, like they just gave up and walked away. But by continuing to work at it, you're becoming better and better every day. You just don't see it.
Right.
But I realized that putting in that work over, like if I showed him my work from 1998 or even 2004, there's no way he would have worked with me.
Sure.
But because I kept at it, because I kept publishing every day, I got to the point where I was highly skilled at writing and writing a certain way, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
attracted them. So I think that's the hurdle.
Yeah.
Is people give up too soon or too quickly, and they just don't realize that it's a long journey. And like Louis Black was on Deuce and Romero, I think their names are, on Vice. I can't remember the other guy's name, but Louis Black was on there, and he's like, I didn't make any money until I was 40.
Yeah.
And I kind of, and when he said that, I was like, I've heard this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Like George Carlin was broke for a really long time. He went broke twice, in fact, because he owed the IRS like millions of dollars. And by being broke, that's what pushed him to do the HBO specials and to constantly get on the road. So I think people need to just understand how long this stuff actually takes to pay off, if it ever pays off at all.
Yeah. I'm going to make a mental note of that for us to discuss later. But
right.
Yeah. And then so talking about like sort of your passions, what is your favorite part about I mean, you talk about wanting to make people laugh, but that's different because you're a little bit separate from the stand-up point of view, which is again a sort of instant gratification sort of thing. You tell a joke and then the people laugh, but
right.
you have the wall of writing something and then just kind of eventually later you find out that people laughed.
Like that's always been a weird thing. Like I'll get people who are just now reading social media as bullshit, who will text me about a joke that I wrote like in 2011. So it's not quite a decade yet, but like the joke is old enough where I don't remember it.
Right. Yeah.
And then I'm like, wait, did I say that? Oh shit! Like I just completely. Like it's a little strange work, especially in comics and in books. Books in particular is incredibly slow. I will get back to doing stand-up. I know I've been saying that for a long time now, but I haven't been in a place where I can make the transition easily until recently. So now I feel like I can start doing that again. But yeah, it is a little tricky to write a joke and then not hear the punchline for like 10 years later.
Right.
But you know what? It's rewarding because what it tells me is that, I read just in the past 3 months, I've gone through about 32 books or so. And honestly, I'm probably only going to remember like 2 of them.
Sure.
Like realistically, I'm only going to remember 2 of them. So for someone to message me almost 10 years later about a joke that I wrote, that's great. I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with that.
What is, I guess, your favorite part about making people laugh or smile?
I realize that's sort of all, so I should back up. I'm an atheist. And so I always tell people I'm an atheist who loves Jesus. And so what that means is I think Jesus was a pretty cool guy with a lot of good things to say. I just don't buy into like, the very spiritual aspects that go with that. And I think that's important to mention because I find a lot of atheists to be antagonistic, wrongfully so. I don't quite understand why they're so antagonistic, to be honest. I think religion is wonderful. But I mention that because I have a very practical outlook on life, which is the only real reason that we're here is to make the world better for the next generation.
Right.
Yeah, like that's our purpose. That's our whole mission. And as long as we're doing that, that's great. And sometimes we don't do that, like electing certain people president.
Right.
And sometimes we do that great by making people laugh. And so I decided that the world can be chaotic and random, and it can be messy, and there's things that you don't control. So my way of helping people deal with that is just by making them laugh their ass off.
Yeah.
And if I can do that, then I've done a good job as a fellow human.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Sort of, I don't know if it's like sort of irrelated, but either way, I have lived in Oklahoma for most of my life. So,
Oh, there you go.
what is it like to be in New York and sort of work in New York and live there and all the other whateverness of?
So, which part? Because I've lived all over New York. I lived on the Canadian border. I lived in Buffalo. I lived in the Capital Region. I lived in the Hudson Valley, and then I lived in New York City. So, and I was born on Long Island. So, like, I am a true blue,
Sure,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, New Yorker. New York, when you leave New York City, is definitely a red state. I think people don't quite understand that.
Hmm.
Because I found that, like, I found when I used to live in Glens Falls, and then I was like in Missouri for whatever reason, because I've traveled all over the country at this
Hmm.
point, and they'd be like, "Hey, so what's New York like?" I'd be like, "Well, what part of New York are you talking
Sure,
about?"
yeah.
And they would just think the city, but then you would be like, "Well, no, like once you leave the Holland Tunnel, like the world ends." Like it
Yeah.
becomes. That's the joke I always tell people is that the second you leave the Lincoln Tunnel, New Yorkers think the world ends. Yeah, because it's like a completely different
Yeah,
planet.
exactly.
So it's fascinating to watch the interplay between New York and then like New York, like New York City.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm assuming you're talking specifically about New York City, though.
I
Right?
suppose, yeah, but it
Okay.
is important to highlight the difference between just, I mean, all of the neighborhoods and the titles for every different place that becomes its own culture, basically.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how different the people are in
Mm.
different parts of New York. Like if you go north past Albany, they're very, very much of New England.
Hmm.
They don't quite have the accent that people think when you think of New England, but their attitudes and mentalities are much closer to as if they were from Massachusetts than if
Hmm.
they were from like New York City. But if you go to Western New York is fascinating because it's so like I don't know if you're a sports fan, but they love their sports teams.
Mm.
Like they have a deep spiritual love for the Buffalo Bills and for the Buffalo City. And I can't quite explain to people not from Western New York what that's like.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating because that's like the center and it's everyone. It doesn't matter what color you are, how rich you are. Like if
Hmm.
you are a Western New Yorker, you are a fan of the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. It's like to a person, and that's sort of the center of the universe. And then New York is, as in New York City, is sort of like this weird beast that's always changing. Like right now
Hmm.
it's changing because it's becoming a richer and richer city.
Mm.
So, my mom and dad, my mom was born and raised in Brooklyn. My dad was born and raised in the Bronx. My grandparents were Bronx residents their whole life. And my grandparents on my mom's side were Brooklyn residents for most of their life until they went out to Long Island, as did most Americans, because Long Island was the first suburb after
Mm.
World War II. So they were part of that wave of movement. But, like in a lot of respects, they're true blue New Yorkers. And so, the New York City for my mom and dad is completely different of the New York City that I had.
Hmm.
Like it used to be when I first started going into the city when I was little, not when I was little, but when I was probably closer to your age, my parents would be like, "Oh, don't go on the subway." Like this, the subway is scary, and
Sure.
don't make eye contact, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
And my generation I'm a New Yorker of the 9/11 generation.
Sure. Yeah.
So I distinctly remember New York City before 9/11 and New York City after 9/11. And
Hmm.
after 9/11, it became a much friendlier place.
Yeah.
You weren't, you didn't have that don't make eye contact thing
Yeah.
that you had prior to 9/11. You had, oh no, we're all in this together. We just went through something really traumatic. And if someone drops something, you will stop. You will stop and
Yeah.
help them. Or if a tourist has questions, you will stop and help the tourist, as opposed to just walking by them. And then now the New York City for my niece Olivia, who's 4 now and she's living in Queens.
Mm.
I don't know what it's going to be like
Yeah.
because people are getting priced out. And
Hmm.
so you have people getting priced out to the edges. And so she's like in Flushing. And before that, she was in Diker Heights in Brooklyn. But, is she going to have the same experience I had? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's hard to describe New York City for that reason because it's ever changing.
Yeah. But no, I think it's really cool how how so much can be contained in, I guess, such a small space.
Right?
Because I
Yeah,
mean,
it's the history.
for myself, it's uh, everything's 30 minutes away.
Right. And that's true for most of America. I think one of the things that I was spoiled by was mass transit.
Mhm.
Except for when I was living in like Potsdam on the Canadian border, because there was only like one bus, and it took 13 hours for that one bus to wind its way slowly through the Adirondacks, making all these stops just to get to Potsdam. But yeah, like the thing that New Yorkers are spoiled by is mass transit and how
Yeah.
close things are. Because if you go to New Mexico, for you to go to Albuquerque to Roswell, you're
Mhm.
spending hours on the interstate. Like there's
Right.
nothing. Like if you're in Texas going from Houston to Austin or Houston
Yeah.
to San Antonio, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And that's most of America. That's Nebraska. Like if you're going from Omaha to Lincoln, which is not that long of a drive,
Mhm.
there's nothing out there. So yeah, like I'm deeply familiar with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that we like it's easy. You know, I've made jokes about Trump because you should make fun of him. But I've also one of the things that I think is worth mentioning is that because we live so far from each other in the country, it's hard to get a good read
Yeah.
on where we're all at.
Mhm.
Because you can find within different communities different attitudes about different politicians
Sure.
we're all within the same state, and that's because the country is so big.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things about the internet is if you are part of a fringe community, if you're an atheist like I am, or you're a LGBTQ ally like I am, like
Mhm.
you didn't have a lot of people to talk to prior to 1992.
Sure.
And now then you had Netscape, and then you had AOL, and the internet kind of allowed the country to come closer together. And so, but yeah, like it's that distance thing is something we don't often think about.
Right. I guess sort of last thing on this half of the podcast. What advice do you have for people who are trying to get to at least some sort of level where you are, to where people know who they are and buy their things?
Yeah. So how do you get known, right?
Yeah.
Not famous. I know Mark Schaefer wrote a book called Known, and one of the things he talks about is we're not talking about fame, or we're not talking Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie. We're
Sure.
talking known to the point where, oh, I know who that guy is.
Mhm.
Like Kevin Smith is kind of the barometer, or even less so. Like Mark, I don't know if you listen to his podcasts. He does a lot of podcasts. He does a lot of talking, but
Mm.
the best podcast he has is Fat Man on Batman, where he has Mark Bernardin as his co-host.
Hmm.
And Mark Bernardin was one of those guys where I had read his stuff for years in the LA Times and the Hollywood Reporter and all the other places that he used to write, but I
Mhm.
didn't know who he was
Yeah.
until he became the co-host
Mhm.
on Fat Man on Batman. Then I was like, oh, I know who that guy is now. And so now when I'll actively look for his stuff. So that's what I think we're talking about here. It's like that level of, I know who that guy is. So I will,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
he wrote the comic Genius.
Hmm.
So like once I made the connection of, oh, that's the same Mark Bernardin that writes for the Hollywood Reporter. That's Kevin Smith's co-host. I'm
Sure.
going to go and read all his stuff. And so I went and bought Genius, and he also did The Highwaymen, which they're making into a movie. So how do you get there? The trick is to pick one thing, and this will sound like it's easy advice, but it's not. I promise you it's
Right.
not. The trick to it is picking one thing that has a large enough audience behind it,
Mhm.
and at the same time that you're focusing on being very good at that one thing, you're building up a network within that community. So like right now, I'll give you a great example. I am writing that comic I mentioned. I mentioned 3.5 comics.
Mhm.
The half comic is called Jobbers, which is a comic about women's professional wrestling. And so
Mm.
what I've done is, starting from zero, because I don't know anyone in the women's professional wrestling community,
Sure.
I've started following all the wrestlers and talking to them. And, I started up a little talk show to interview them and get to know them a little bit better. and at the same time doing my research and writing the comic and making sure it's as good as can be. And if I do those two things long enough, there will be a convergence where people will go, "Oh, BJ, yeah, I was on his show."
Yeah.
Or I heard Riley Shepard, who was on my show today.
Mhm.
She's the what is it, the geek goddess or the geek warrior? Shit, I can't remember what it is. She's awesome, is what I'm getting at. But like, if you know who Riley is, but you don't know who I am, the odds are good that you've gone and listened to the interview.
Sure.
So now you know who I am. So it's honestly that easy. It sounds easy, but you just have to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Switching gears, and you already kind of mentioned it a little bit, but my always changing way of trying to segue into it. What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life, which you already kind of mentioned?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't want to sound okay. So when people say they're an atheist, and I don't want to generalize, so I don't mean to say all atheists, but at least the ones I encounter, they're very steadfast in that there is no such thing as God. There's no such thing as anything, and I don't think you can take an absolute position like that. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson had the best answer. I don't remember what podcast it was, but they said to him, "Are you an atheist?" And he says, I'm not an ist, because an ist implies you've taken an absolute position. I'm a scientist. I keep an open mind. I work with the information that I have. And that's sort of my approach to things. I keep a very open mind about what there is out there and what could be out there. And I don't dismiss anything, because who really knows?
Was that? I'm trying to remember if that was Waking Up or Nerdist.
It must. I think it was Nerdist, because I listen to a lot of Nerdist. But don't hold me to that. But yeah, I think he has the best answer. So I mean, look, in my family, it is a big deal. When a loved one passes away in the Jewish religion, you light a candle for them on the day that they passed. So that's something my family does. I think that sort of thing is wonderful. Yeah. I don't dismiss that at all. I think that that's a great thing. Do I know if it means anything? I don't. So to me, I kind of want to take back the word atheist.
Yeah.
And I want to take it back to just mean I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's my only firm position, is I don't know. And some people will go, "Oh, well, that's agnostic." But even agnostic, I think, is kind of like a cute twist. Like, I think agnosticism became a cute nickname because atheism developed a bad connotation.
Right.
And I'll give you a good example. Like, we've seen that throughout history, because in America in the 1910s, we developed propaganda. We created it.
Yeah.
That's what we used to get us into World War I. So everyone was cool with the word propaganda until the Nazis started using it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once we saw what the Nazis were doing, we're like, oh, we're in public relations.
Yes.
we're not in propaganda. We're in public. It's the same thing. And so that's kind of my general take on like agnosticism is it's just atheism with like a more cuter, like connotation to it.
But like you mentioned, you do really enjoy or like aspects of spirituality. So in what ways are you a spiritual person?
So I am a big fan of Alan Watts.
Okay.
And I don't know how to describe Alan. Like, so it's, what's crazy is that he's one of those people that generationally, like you and I shouldn't know who he is. But if you say Alan Watts to like a baby boomer, the boomers all know who he is, because he came out of the 60s and 70s. He described himself as like a stand-up philosopher. And so what he did was he took a lot of Hindu and Buddhist beliefs and introduced them to Americans in a way that was funny and accessible and also very thought-provoking. And so that's sort of what I would gravitate to. I was reading an in The Hollywood Reporter where Jim Carrey is saying, well, there is no me.
Mhm.
Like none of this matters. There is no me, which is a very Buddhist thing.
Mhm.
This, it's one collective consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There is no me. So, when he says it, he kind of, that's what he's talking about, and I'm fascinated by that sort of thing. Like, I kind of wonder if that's the case, because we, even the most ardent evolutionary biologists, if you read the book Sapiens and then Homo Deus, which is a sequel to Sapiens, I can't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but it's the same author. And he talks about this. This is an evolutionary biologist. It's kind of like, we have no explanation for your consciousness. Like we don't know why we know why you have certain impulses.
Yeah.
We know that those impulses are derived from a chemical reaction in your brain because we've proven that we can change it, but we have no idea why it's there.
Yeah.
So I do look at a lot of the things that Alan Watts talks about in Buddhism and from the Hindu religion that kind of answer those questions, and that's sort of what I would say I kind of go towards.
Yeah. Is there a way of being spiritual without being religious?
Yeah, I think so. Because to me, to be spiritual just means you're accepting of things that you're not aware of. You're just keeping that open mind. After my grandmother died, there was a squirrel that hung out around the house, and it just kept bothering my grandfather and my sister. And they were convinced that the squirrel was my grandmother. And so that sounds crazy, but in the Jewish religion, there's this, among some people anyway, there's a belief that after you die, you've got like 30 days of just hanging out before like you go on to the next thing. And so who's to say, can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that squirrel is not your grandmother, that's out there trying to send you a signal? And we've seen that throughout human history. There's a book called The Hero of a Thousand Faces, or The Hero with a Thousand Faces, by Joseph Campbell, which is a really difficult to read book. So I don't recommend it to people unless you're really into folklore. But what he points out is that humans, regardless of where we came from, we've all been telling the same story over and over and over again. And the same story has all of these different aspects, and all of those stories have a spiritual aspect. So can you really say that there's nothing to that? And the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah. And sort of accompanied with spirituality and religion comes the sense of morality. And so being a spiritual atheist, how do you, where does your morality come from?
So in the past 200 years, and this is something that they talk about in Homo Deus, which I do actually recommend. I do recommend people read that. That's a good read. He talks about the rise of humanism, and not everything has been good that's come out of humanism. The Nazis are an extreme. If you take humanism to an extreme end, you get totalitarianism.
Right.
But if you take humanism to the other extreme, you get not quite Buddhism, but you kind of get this almost hippie, hey, we're just humans. We've all decided to take care of each other. So that's our moral center. I have a joke in A National Story of Minor Significance where you open up the cover, and I have these different tips for life. And so it says, don't be evil. And it says, tip number 1, don't be a dick. And so that's sort of my guiding principle.
Yeah.
Is don't be a dick. Don't. Thomas Jefferson has had this belief of, as long as you're not picking my pocket or breaking my leg, I support whatever it is that you want to believe and do.
Yeah.
Which is just that's a very humanist thing. That's very, as long as you're not bothering anyone, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Just don't hurt anyone. And that's sort of my moral compass is, don't be a jerk.
Yeah. So, and not being a jerk is kind of associated with politics nowadays.
Right. Yeah.
unfortunately. So how do we reduce the political divide that has appeared
So
nowadays?
I have good news and bad news. And depending on how you interpret the bad news, we could decide if there's good news or not in there.
Mm,
The bad news is that political divide has always been there.
hmm
It has always been there. Like if you study, so I at one point was going for my PhD in American history. I will be going for it again. In fact, I have to go and retake the GRE,
mm.
which sucks. But I will be going. So I mentioned that to kind of like don't want you to think I'm pulling this out of my butt.
Sure.
Like I do a lot of reading involving American history because that's always been my passion. And so
Mm,
the divide has always been there. It's always been about, can I drive a wedge in this group over fear of the other? And I'll give you a good example of that.
mm,
Abe Lincoln, a lot of people don't know this, funded a German language paper
hmm,
in Illinois. Like he was technically the owner
mhm,
of that paper because he knew how important it was to get the German immigrants that were coming to Illinois to take part in at the time, the new Republican Party.
hmm.
Because he knew the division was so so a lot of people don't realize this. The Republicans of today are not the Republicans of Abraham
Right.
Lincoln, no matter what they want you to think. The Republicans of Abraham Lincoln came from a split between the Whigs and the Democrats. And the
Mm,
Democrats were pro-slavery, or they didn't want to end slavery. It wasn't that they liked it to some respects, depending on what part of the country they were from. They
mm,
just didn't want to disrupt what was happening because it was bad for business.
mm.
So you had those Democrats, and then you had the Whigs that were kind of like, yeah, the slavery thing is bad, but maybe we just limit it, or maybe we just sort of, what if we try this and then we could stop it that way, or what if we don't stop it, and what if we just let it go away gradually? And so the Republicans were kind of like, no, if you work a fair day's work for a fair day's pay,
Mhm,
that was the Republican motto. That's what they built the party around. They said, slavery is bad. This is something that needs to go away. And sure, they were not abolitionists right out of the gate.
mhm,
To be clear, like the early Republicans were kind of like, okay, we think that we could start to chip away at this if we do X, Y, and Z.
mhm.
But because of how divided the country was, Lincoln knew he needed the support of everyone he could possibly get,
Mhm.
and that never changed. Like we had the Know Nothings who were anti-immigrant, and in fact, if you were not a WASP, they were anti-you. I think people forget that. Like if you were not a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, you were not American, and
Mhm.
they did not want you. And even when my ancestors were coming here in the early 1910s, coming off the boats, people did not want those dirty Jews. Like there
Right.
was a lot of anti-Semitism, and so it's a long way of saying we've always had fractured politics in the United States.
Yeah.
It's partly because the country is so big, partly because of the issue of slavery, and we never quite dealt with the ramifications of it.
Hmm.
In fact, a lot of the issues that you see today is just that what happened was we won the Civil War, but then we shit the bed.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other way to describe it. Like anyone who has studied Reconstruction and
Mhm.
Andrew Johnson will tell you, yeah, we messed up. And because we messed up so badly and empowered the South, we allowed for the major division to never quite go away. So
Mm.
this is a really long way of saying, if you're bummed out about the politics of Trump, or you're bummed out about the politics of the Republicans today, just keep in mind that this is not a new thing.
Sure.
So the good news is, because it's not a new thing, we can take a step back and go, hey, we had some really bad presidents, but you know what we had right after that? Out of Hoover, we got the New Deal.
Mhm.
And we forget that. And out of Eisenhower, we had Kennedy, and then Johnson with, for putting Vietnam aside for a second, who had the Great Society,
Mhm.
and the equal rights law. And so every time we've had like out of George W. Bush, we
Mhm.
had Barack Obama.
Yeah.
So we have always, this country has always been one step forward, two steps back, one step forward. The important thing is to not forget that, and to get cynical and then not vote.
Mhm.
Because if you don't vote and you don't get involved, that step forward might not happen as fast as you want it to. Like
Right.
it will happen. We already see the correction coming. like you can look at Ocasio-Cortez,
Hmm.
and she's like definitely the harbinger of the next step forward,
Right.
which is very exciting.
Hmm.
But unless we keep pushing, then that step doesn't happen. So I think that that's what the good news is. The good news is, as bad as Trump is, as bad as it is now with the Republican Party, that we will take a step forward after
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Um, two sort of straightforward questions that I sort of forgot to add
Sure.
near
Yeah.
the end of the spiritual part. So first of all, God question mark, or rather, what is your definition of God?
I think it's something that's beyond the realm of human knowledge. I don't think as a species that we should be so arrogant to assume that we know everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of I was a big fan of Futurama, and there's an episode where Bender gets lost in space,
Yeah.
and he encounters what he thinks is God,
Mm-hmm.
but he never really gets a definitive answer. So what? It's just like this crab nebula that's talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have no idea of what's actually out there,
Yeah.
and I think that's wonderful. I think that's exciting
Yeah.
because look at all the stuff that we didn't know 100 years ago that we know today.
Mm-hmm.
I think about all the stuff that we're going to know 100 years from now that we don't know today.
Right. Yeah.
So there could be something out there.
Mm-hmm.
There very well could be that we were life on Mars, something got wiped out, and we were bacteria that hitched a ride on a comet.
Sure.
Like that. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We have theories, which I think is great. And so it's definitely a question mark for me. Like, I don't, again, like I don't want people to think that all atheists are like these adamant,
Sure.
ruthless, I dig in my feet in the sand and not change their position. I just take the position of, I don't know. So I only work with what I have and what I know.
Right. And then the other one is free will question mark.
Oh, I change my opinion on this every day. Honestly, it really depends on when you catch me. I would very much like to believe that free will is a thing. If you are an ardent Buddhist and you believe that everything, it's all one conscious experiencing itself subjectively, then you definitely don't believe in free will because you're just kind of going along for the ride.
Right.
If you are an ardent evolutionary biologist, you're also not a big believer in free will because you'll say, because of the biochemical reaction in your brain, even though we don't know why your consciousness exists, we have empirical evidence to show you why your cat is so cute. I could show you that the cat has evolved over time to become increasingly cuter so that we will take care of it.
Exactly.
So I don't know. It really depends on when you catch me. I'd like to believe that there's something like that, but on most days I probably lean against it.
So only, I guess, two more questions. What makes you happy?
Well, I almost died a few years ago.
Okay.
And so everything is the honest answer to that. I just enjoy everything. And I know that sounds kind of like very vague, but that's just sort of how it is. Like it could be a car commercial that was just funny that I could really enjoy, or it could be a good book, or it could be a good conversation, or it could be a good pro wrestling match. Or it could just be that someone was wearing a really pretty dress that day, or someone was beautiful. It's honestly everything. Because I think the thing you find out when you almost die is, oh crap, this could all be over in like a second.
Right.
So I am just going to take a step back and chill, and enjoy everything that I encounter.
Yeah. I don't think I can let you just skate by and say that you almost died and not ask about it. So
Sure.
How did you almost die?
So I have a condition now, but I had something before called mitral valve prolapse that was really severe. We just had no idea how bad it was. And it got to the point where I was out in Wales giving this presentation, and I had like 100 degree temperature, 100 plus degree temperature. I had chills. I like almost fainted. I did the presentation and I nailed it. I like the ad.
The show must go on.
That's right. The show must go on. And then I like passed out for 24 hours. And then had like this really bad cough. And then I guess what was happening was I was experiencing the early signs of heart failure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I came back. I made that flight back, which was hell, from the United Kingdom to New York, and then rushed in to see the heart doctor. And he's like, "Yeah, you gotta go and get this fixed right now."
Yeah.
So I went in for heart surgery. And it's supposed to be a pretty routine surgery, as routine
as heart surgeries can be.
Yeah, like the reassuring thing is if any of you ever develop something with your heart, there's really good news. By 2020, most of those procedures will be over in like an hour, and you could probably go home the same day. Like my procedure, had everything gone correctly, would have been like a same day procedure. They would have gone up through the leg, fixed the valve, and I would have been done. So they really made great strides with heart surgery. The problem is if shit goes wrong, then they've got to open you up and really get in there and do all the stuff. Yeah. So they went in there and did it, and it almost didn't work, but they got it to work, and then closed me back up. And then between surgeries, I had a heart attack, and then I flatlined and almost died.
Yeah.
So they had to revive me with the shock paddles and then rush me back in for an emergency surgery. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah.
And so when you come out of something like that, you definitely have a different attitude about things.
Yeah. Do you remember any of it?
No. So the funny thing was I remember going into the surgery and counting back from 100 or whatever it was. And then I woke up, and then I didn't realize I was in the ICU.
Mm-hmm.
So I just assumed that I was in like the waiting area or whatever it was, because I wasn't really aware of my surroundings. And then on the board, she was the nurse was writing the date, and she wrote like July. So I went in July 13th, and she wrote like July 15th.
Oh,
I was like, is it what your date is wrong? And she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, it's the 13th. Like, it's the night of the 13th, right? She's like, no, you've been out for almost a day. So I don't remember being shocked. I do remember the after effects of being hit with the shock panels, which is why I don't remember. Like, because if you get hit with those things, it like zaps your it zaps your memory a bit.
Your brain is electricity.
Yeah. So, one of the plus sides of getting shock paddled, right, is not remembering a heart attack and almost dying. So, yeah. So that's that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you can still be around to make people smile and enjoy things. My last question is cake or pie?
Right now, I'm definitely in a pie phase.
Okay.
Yeah, I am definitely like a cherry pie, apple pie.
I wrote a piece called Pie Phase.
Did you? That's beautiful. I would like to read that, so please send.
No, it's a musical piece. So.
I would like to listen to it. So please. Yeah, I'm definitely in the pie phase.
Yeah, well, score another one for pie. My fiance and I are we have sort of a funny argument about cake or pie. I'm pie and she's cake, and so nice. I'm asking every guest cake or pie so that we can keep track of the statistics. So far, it's more pie.
just be careful, because if you win, your partner will not be happy.
It's not about winning. It's more about the fun, really.
Yeah, that's true. So I was married, and so I always remember. You always pick your battles.
Right. BJ, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where can we find all of you and your things?
Yeah, it's all at bjmendelson.com. I have my presentations are up on there. If you want a free copy of Social Media is Bullshit, there's a free PDF on the contact page. My comics are like $1, so Hopefully that's not asking too much, but it's all at bjmendelson.com.
That's awesome. I will be recording another podcast immediately after this, but I still gotta end the podcast formally. So, once again, I'm Santiago Ramones, and you are
BJ Mendelson.
Yes, that is.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I was looking out the window.
Oh yeah, you can find all of my things on my website, santiagoramones.com, similar to how BJ Mendelson has his stuff. I make music, which you can download a demo of my songs with words. But there's also some composery stuff that is linked onto my SoundCloud. And so you can pay money for that demo or not pay any money for that demo. And you can also listen to this podcast either through my website, through Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, or on Stitcher. And on all of those things, you can comment and leave reviews and let me know what you think. And if there are questions, suggestions, or guest suggestions, just let me know anything about the podcast. I always end my podcast with my 3 things. Those 3 things shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.
I like that. You cover your bases.